of I Got Nothing, a podcast for exhausted writers. I am your host, Leani Lopez, and welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you, sharing tips and tricks of the trade when it comes to writing. So let's just dive right in. First, I want to say a big thank you to all my new listeners. I had a significant jump from December until now. I went from, on average, about 20 downloads a month to last month having like 170. So there's a lot of new people listening, so welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. So this topic I have was actually pitched to me on Tumblr so many months ago. It was a specific question that I'm going to get a little bit broader, but the question pertained to my individual writing process, and if I had a different writing process when it came to ghostwriting versus my own writing. For those of you who don't know or may be joining us for the first time, I have been ghostwriting for about 3 to 4 years now, and ghostwriting is when a client pays me to write a book for them. Typically, they supply the plot, characters, all that information. I just take their ideas and I put it into book form for them. And I've been doing that for a couple years now. So the question that was posed, as I said, pertaining to my writing process, and if I had a different process for ghostwriting than I do for my own stuff. The long and short of it is yes. Ghostwriting, since I am writing for someone, there has to be more structure. So what typically happens is I am hired for a job. I get the details ahead of time, and if it's a job I'm interested in, I accept. Before I even begin writing or working on the book, first and foremost, I have to have an outline to present to the client for their approval. I'm not sure how it works with other ghostwriters. I have a pretty finite view of ghostwriting. I've only been doing it for a couple of years, but in my experience, I have a fantastic client that I work with, and the outline process is very much a collaboration between she and I. As I said, the client will provide the information, the tropes they would like the novel to hit, the general idea that they have, the idea of the hero and the heroine, what kind of personalities they have, things of that nature. And it's up to me to take all those notes that we discuss and put them in a cohesive outline that shows what the book is going to be about. Now, since someone else is paying me to write the book, this makes sense. They want to know that I have a plan, that I have some idea of where the story is going to go moving forward before we even begin. And so, when it comes to my process for ghostwriting, it starts with the outline. And typically I go back and forth with my client. I'll draft up an outline, send it to her, she makes her changes, sends it back, and we kind of go back and forth until we both agree on a particular outline and move forward from there. That doesn't mean I can't deviate from the outline, but for the most part, I need to stick to what is agreed upon. Within reason, if there's something that turns out to be a plot hole that we didn't think about, or the pacing's not quite right, thankfully, my client has the confidence in me to fix that and make it a better story. When it comes to my own stuff, I will say ghostwriting has definitely helped me in that regard, because I did not used to outline any of my stuff before. I did, but not in an official outline capacity, like this is happening in this chapter and this is happening in this. What I typically do for my own stuff is I do bullet points. And sometimes those bullet points will lead into some kind of cohesive plot. Sometimes it's just scenes I want to hit or things I want to keep in the back of my head in terms of characterization. But I'm definitely a pantser when I'm writing, I fly by the seat of my pants. I'm just like, let's see how this goes. But it's hard not to start outlining or thinking ahead in your own work when you do it for somebody else. It becomes sort of second nature, and it's definitely helped a lot. It'd be interesting to see how it works now moving forward. I mean, I've already released a book, and I am about to release a second book soon. But those are stories I had written years ago. So it's been a long time since I've started my own story while also ghostwriting at the same time. I think my current work in progress, Ghost, is the first one. And while I don't have an outline for it, I definitely have more organization than I've ever had before. and part of that is, I think, a huge part of that is because I started writing fan fiction. And for fan fiction, I used to just sit and write whatever was in my head. I didn't plan it out. I didn't think of what was going to happen in the next chapter. I just kind of wrote a chapter and was like, oh, that happened, and then moved on. So my original stuff kind of has that start to it of me putting something down on paper and going, interesting. Let's see where this goes. Which, for some people, works really well. For me, it made it very difficult to actually finish anything. So I think moving forward, I am going to be kind of merging my writing process between ghostwriting and my own stuff to find a happy medium. But you do what works for you. For some people, it's planning everything out beat by beat, and that's great. And if that works for you, I say go for it. I wish I could work that way. My brain just won't. Mostly because if I settle on an outline, sometimes I find I used to feel confined by the outline. I don't so much anymore. And even just jotting down, like I said, bullet points of things that are going to happen or beats I want to hit helps a lot more than what I used to do, which is like, well, what's going to happen in this chapter? Especially, I mean, for Ghost, it's a crime thriller. So there is a crime that needs to be solved. So I, as the writer, should probably know how that crime was committed and how they're going to solve it before I write it, in theory. But I like being more freeform with my writing. I don't know, it's just something about just sitting down, opening up a blank page, and then seeing what my brain spits out has just been really fun for me. And sometimes I'm like, wow, this is really great. Sometimes I'm like, what crap is this? What was I thinking? And most of the time I'm like, what is this supposed to say? Because I've definitely skipped over 3 or 4 words in one sentence, and I don't remember what they were supposed to be. So for those who enjoy doing outlines or want to do an outline but are feeling a little worried, outlines are great. They really are just more guidelines than actual rules. Don't be afraid to deviate from the outline. Some of the best plot twists I've written deviated from what I was planning. For example, there's something in Slip of the Hand towards the end that I was not anticipating happening, and then my characters were like, we're gonna do this, and I was like, well, fuck me, alright, go ahead. And I just kind of went with the flow. So for me, it's striking a balance between planning and flying by the seat of my pants. I haven't quite found the right balance, and I don't think I ever will. I think it really will depend on the project that I'm working on. When I was younger and trying to plan things out, my first novel that I ever wrote, I think, took like over 7 years to finish. And that wasn't something I was working on all the time. I had transitioned from high school to college to adult. So a lot of little life things going on in there. So for my first novel, I actually wrote it in pieces and then put the pieces together afterwards. I don't know how I did that. looking back now at all my notes, no wonder it took me 7 years to write it, because I was just writing scenes here and there without really knowing how they were gonna connect or what picture they were gonna make. I don't do it that way anymore. My favorite thing to do actually when writing is to use brackets. I am a huge fan of brackets, so I understand a lot of people need to write linearly, and I have definitely become that way since ghostwriting. It's just easier for me and for my client who I need to send updates to. But what I have trained myself to do, and sometimes forget I can do, is to put brackets for scenes that I'm not quite sure about or that are getting me stuck. And by that, I mean literally put brackets, put like short information on what the scene is supposed to be, close the bracket, and then move on to the next scene. I found that it's really, really, really helpful. Once I get to the point where I feel like I can't move forward with the story, then I go back and I reread and fill out those brackets. And once I'm done, those scenes usually are connected a little bit better and helps moving forward. Brackets are your best friend. Make sure you put detailed notes. Because sometimes I get mad at past Leani because she will leave a note in the brackets and I'm like, what the hell is that supposed to say? I think my favorite one was I wrote the lead into a love scene and then I didn't feel like writing the love scene in that moment and then I moved on. And the note was, epic love scene here, like, whoa. And I remember reading it back going, what does that even mean? So sometimes just leave little notes for yourself so future you can laugh at past you or curse at past you, whichever one. Either way, it's going to happen. Another part of the question on my personal writing process was how I came up with ideas for my stories. Almost all of my stories start with just one scene in my head that I can't stop thinking about. And I typically will sit with that scene for a while before I write it down, mostly to see if it has staying power. Sometimes there have been scenes where I'm like, oh, that's really cool, and then I think on it later, I'm like, oh, it's not that cool. Or I just forgot about it completely, so clearly it didn't hold my attention enough to keep. But almost all of my stories and books that I've ever written have started with just one scene that I couldn't get out of my head. Or, this happens a lot, I have very vivid dreams, like super like movie style dreams. And a lot of my dreams have become stories or fanfics and scenes that I've jotted down and incorporated later into something. So I'm a big fan of trying to keep a dream journal, or if I have a dream that is like really, really intense, to write it down as soon as I wake up. Because you never know. You never know. I think one of my best story ideas came to me while I was driving. And it was very simple. I was literally just driving into work and I was like, I need a new story idea. What's a story idea? And then I was quiet for a bit and then I was like, what if the Grim Reaper fell in love? And that was it. That was it. And originally it was going to be a book, and so I wrote a prologue. And I think it was only like 2 pages or something like that. And then I sat on that for a bit. And then I sent it to my uncle, who is my cheerleader and one who has always been super supportive. Shout out to Theo Alvey, I love you. And he's someone I can definitely bounce ideas off of. And he was like, you need to expand on this. And I was like, cool. And went back and forth about it being a book, didn't feel right. Then I thought, hey, this would actually make a really good screenplay. And I wrote it as a screenplay. I think it took me a couple months to get the screenplay format and kind of get inspiration. But yeah, I wrote it and then I sat on it a bit more. And I'm a very impatient person, so I was like, I want to do something with this. So I ended up taking that screenplay and transcribing it into an audio drama / podcast show. And once I did that, it sort of came alive, and it's something I've been working on for the last 5 or 6 years. It's a very long process, and it's had a lot of setbacks. But it's one that I really want to finish because the story is so near and dear to my heart. And that prologue I had written turned into the opening monologue of the audio drama. All because I sat in the car and was like, what if the Grim Reaper fell in love? And then it went from there, and it's nowhere near what I thought it would be. It turned into something much more meaningful than I ever anticipated, which is part of the reason why I am so determined to finish it. It's called To Court Death. I have at least an episode done. I have most of the recordings done for the various characters, just the main 2 characters. There's a lot of monologues, which I will never write monologues again if I do another audio drama, because it just is so much. On paper it looks good, but then when you're editing it, it's a nightmare. And when you're acting it, it's a nightmare. But that is something that started as just a one-off idea in my head, and I went from there. I didn't outline it. I didn't know what I wanted it to be until I was done writing it. And then when I realized the potential in it and what it could stand for, then I went back and really fleshed that out. And I think it's some of my best writing, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. Hopefully in the next year or 2. There are 5 episodes, a lot of audio I have to record and go through. But I'm determined to finish it because it's just so near and dear to my heart. And yeah, so writing process, it really depends on the project. I'm a big fan of bullet points. Outlines work too. I guess, bullet points are their own type of outline. I think when people hear outline, they think it has to be really in depth and say, this is exactly what's going to happen. And it's not always like that, at least not for me. Usually I'm like, bullet points, these 4 things need to happen in the chapter. The rest can be just B plot or C plot or whatever it is. But as long as I hit those 4 bullet points in the chapter, I'm golden. 4 or 5, whatever it is. I also, me personally, I feel like when I plan too much, it takes a little fun out of the writing. I like my characters to surprise me. And I like things to happen. Some of my favorite scenes are just sitting there writing going, whoa, okay, this is cool. Where's this coming from? And yeah, so that's a little sneak peek into my writing process. I am super curious to hear how other people write and what their process is. It's just so fascinating to me. Some people have very strict formats or formulas, and that's fantastic. And I've tried that. And I just get too anxious that I'm not following the formula correctly. So I kind of throw out the formula and have my own. But whatever works for you, that's the big thing I hope you guys take away from this podcast, that with all my tips and suggestions, the most important thing to think about when you're writing is what works for you and go with it. There's no right way to write. There's no wrong way. There are rules when it comes to writing, and it's important to know what those rules are so that you can decide when to throw them out the window. And I think that's what I'm going to leave you with this time. Yeah, so again, thank you for listening. This has been episode 10 of I Got Nothing, a podcast for exhausted writers. Can't believe there are 10 of these already. So exciting. As always, I am open to questions, topic suggestions, anything you want me to expand upon, just shoot me a message and let me know. I love hearing from listeners, and I want to talk about topics that you guys want to hear about. So shoot me a message, and can't wait to talk to you guys again. Bye.